Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today we are doing my March wrap up. So March, I think, was kind of like February for me. It was a pretty good reading month, but it just felt a little odd for me because it's kind of different from my usual reading. I read more than I usually do. I read 14 books. Again, it was a lot of audiobooks, quite a bit of contemporary romance still, although I had a few more like fantasies and stuff mixed in there. I also had quite a few rereads, I think, and part of that is because I did reread a series, but let's just get into it. We'll start with all of my fantasy and then we'll talk about the contemporary romance at the end. So fantasy, let's start with, I read 2 ebooks, which also don't read a lot of ebooks, but the first one was a reread, which was The Forest God by Jamie Lackey. This is a little novella where we're following 3 perspectives. One is a forest god who gets reincarnated continuously into the bodies of different forest creatures. We're also following an apprentice forest witch who is right on the precipice of completing her training and taking vows to becoming the forest witch and like connecting herself to the magic of the forest. And we are following a young lord. They are in this country that used to be quite prosperous but has just slowly been in decline, and they are gonna find out about kind of why that might be happening and what they could possibly team up to do in order to stop it. So this, as I said, was a reread and I just had such a great time with this. I think it is a really fun little like forest fantasy. I remember enjoying it, but I feel like I enjoyed it even more on reread than I did the first time. And I'm not gonna like go too much into it because it's a little novella, but it is it was very fun. And I think that if you want something that is like, you know, you get the forest fantasy, forest witch vibes, but you want something really bite-sized, this is perfect for that. And then I also, after rereading this, discovered that there's actually a sequel, which is called The Forest Gods. And I do kind of feel like maybe they could have put a little more effort into naming the second book, because for a while I was very confused why the first and second book had the exact same title until I realized that the second one was plural. So maybe could have put in a little work on the second title. But this takes place, I think, maybe like 20 years after the first book, and it is at a point where both the Lord and the witch that we knew from the first book have kind of reached a point where they both have successors and they are both able to put down these mantles of responsibility that each of them have had, and what are they gonna do with that? And it ends up sending them on a bit of a quest. And this one I felt was okay. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first book. It felt a little bit unnecessary to me. So, I mean, if you like love the first one, like the second one isn't bad, but the first one I gave 4 stars. The second one I think I gave like 3 stars. I liked the first one as a standalone. I felt like it worked best that way, but that's just me. Next, we have Sorcerer's Legacy by Janie Wirtz. This is my first Janie Wirtz. She's one of my priority authors for the year, so I'm excited that I actually got to one of her books. I am planning to like taste test more of her books. I actually started a reading vlog for this, and I was kind of hoping to get through multiple of her books and maybe finish the vlog in 1 month, but then I was like, that's not gonna happen. So I finished this one, and you'll just hear more about it if I ever finish that vlog. But this is her debut fantasy. It's quite short. I think it's like 250-ish pages, and it is the premise of this book, I feel like, takes a bit of explanation, but essentially we start out following our main character, Elaine, or Elena, who was married to a duke, I believe, at the very beginning of the book. Her husband has been killed, their home has been overthrown, and she has been put into a dungeon, and the person who took over essentially is like, you stay there until I decide whether I'm going to kill and or assault you. So not a great situation. When a sorcerer shows up out of nowhere and essentially is like, I have traveled through time and space to find you for a very specific mission. So if you come with me and marry the prince that I work for, like, I will take you away from here and save you. And she takes that deal because, like, what other option does she have? And then she gets thrown into some court politics. I feel like this was a real roller coaster for me. The first part of the book did not immediately hook me. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this premise. It also has some weird stuff about like I understand why it's necessary for the premise, but also I still was kind of like about the fact that they had to like magically restore her virginity. Then there was a part in the middle that I was very into where we got more invested in like the court politics and intrigue, the backstabbing, the like, who's doing this? There's a bit of a like the mystery of it all and like what are they gonna do next? And like that was very fun. I found that the writing in this took me a little while to get into because Janie Wirtz just has like a really specific way of writing, and there's something about the way she constructs sentences that for me just like doesn't flow easily when I'm reading it. Like I would read sentences and be like, I understand what you're saying, but why would you put words in that order? Like, why? But yeah, so once I was like more into it and more into the plot, I also kind of was more into the weird rhythm of her writing style. I did like the characters in this. I like our main character. She is from the beginning a very like bold character, but what I liked about her is I didn't feel like she was, you know, bold in a way that felt like she was stupid. She did sometimes, you know, talk back to people she probably shouldn't have and sometimes got herself into trouble, but it felt more genuine. It didn't feel like she was just being stupid. She also was shown to be very resilient and resourceful in other situations, and so it felt like a complete character instead of a caricature of this kind of back-talking like character. And what little we got of the prince, I liked him a lot, and I wish that we had had more time with him. I think that was one of the things I felt about this is like it's so short, and I did like the characters, but I really felt like I wanted more time with them. I wanted to kind of build out their relationship and dynamic more, and overall I think that was something I felt about both the characters and the plot and the world, and just like a lot of this is that I just felt like a lot of it needed to be built out more so that things made sense. There was a chunk in the middle that I really enjoyed, and then I really didn't like the ending. I felt like, I don't know, the ending just really didn't work for me, and I don't know how well I can explain why without spoiling things. A lot of it had to do with the fact, one, I think there are a lot of like plot conveniences, magical loopholes for kind of how things progress, and also the tone of the ending. It's like I didn't love the events, but the tone is also really what put me off from the ending, because it felt very like they were like, and then isn't that great that everything worked out? And it's like, no, everything did not work out. There are some very bad things that happened that nobody seems to be acknowledging or emotionally dealing with. That wasn't just like, wow, how nice that that worked out. The tone of it was really what got me at the end. Also, I will say the magic in this, I did not enjoy the magic, and the magic also felt very cheesy. This was written in the 80s, so there are some things that I feel like maybe I need to be more forgiving of, but like the magic just felt kind of goofy because they were constantly talking about like reversing the polarity, and it just, I don't know, it just felt so goofy. Anyways, I gave this 3 stars. When I was in the middle, when I was really enjoying it, I was like 3.5 stars, but then by the end I was like, no, it's gonna be 3 stars at best. So that's my first experience with Janny Wirtz. I do feel like there is some potential for her. Like, I do feel like there is certainly potential if this is her debut, so I'm still kind of interested in some of her other stuff. Next, I have Song of the Huntress by Lucy Holland. This was one of my TBR Clear Out Project books, so I'm glad that I finally got to this. And I actually had started reading this last year, and then I think it was like close to a quarter of the way into this, and then I was kind of bored with it and put it down. So when I was ranking like my Clear Out Project books, this was honestly close to the bottom because I was like, I don't know if I actually care about this. But then I tried it as an audiobook this time around, and I enjoyed it a lot more as an audiobook. It just worked a lot better for me, and I think part of that is that I do enjoy Lucy Holland's writing. This is, you know, Celtic historical fantasy, which is my niche. But also, I just felt like I never really got emotionally invested in the characters, and so it just worked better for me as an audiobook. But to explain what this is about, we have 3 main POVs that we are following. So one is Herla, who is part of the Wild Hunt. She was a companion of Boudica, and in order to get help for their cause, she went to a lord of the other world to ask for help, and he made a deal with her, but of course the deal did not turn out to be what she expected, and she was kind of chained to become part of the Wild Hunt, which is this kind of mythical group of hunters who appear and disappear at different times, and she doesn't really have control over herself and her actions. She's kind of in this like fugue state of like hunting and killing. So we were following her character when something happens that kind of breaks that cycle, and she gets a little bit more like consciousness. She's still tied to the hunt, but she has more awareness and agency, so she starts kind of engaging with the world a little bit more. And then we also are following the King and Queen of Wessex. So Athelberg is like a warrior queen, and the King Ein is more of a peacemaker, but also is kind of in a position where he is maybe giving away too much of his power. And along with that, they have been having some problems in their marriage and kind of letting their work keep them apart from each other to kind of avoid the situation. And all of these pieces kind of come together, come to a head, because some weird supernatural stuff starts happening and the Wild Hunt shows up. There are some political plots that are also kind of coming to a head at this time. And so everything's sort of all happening at once, between like mundane political plots and otherworldly plots all converging at once, and kind of brings all of these characters together. And as I said, I didn't feel like I was super invested in like the characters themselves, although I did like the characters. This does have a sapphic romance in it. It also has an ace character. I had kind of mixed feelings about the way that the ace rep was written, but I also am like, is it a situation where it's like, oh, I don't like how it was done? Or is it like, oh, it was done very intentionally to kind of explore a specific idea? I haven't quite landed on which direction I feel about how it was done. But I did overall enjoy this. I think I liked her other book, Sister Song, more than this. I remember being more invested in that one and invested in the characters, but I would certainly read other books from this author in the future. Next, I have Through Gates of Garnet and Gold by Seanan McGuire. This is the, I don't even know, 11th, 13th something book in the Wayward Children series, which is her portal fantasy series of novellas following children who have escaped to magical worlds that are perfectly suited to them, and then many of them also end up back in our real world, greatly changed by those experiences. This one we are coming back around to a character that we knew from the very first book, Nancy, who I think the place she goes is called the Halls of the Dead. It's like an underworld where she has to be very still and kind of pretend to be a statue. But something is happening, something has gone wrong and is killing the people of this like land of the dead, and she has to enlist her old friends to figure out what is happening. This series, I have enjoyed a lot about this series. Last year, I kind of was like, you know, this series has lost its sparkle for me and I need to stop reading it. However, I do really like Nancy's character, and so I was once again sucked into reading a book in this series. However, this time at least I had the wisdom to not buy the book and just listen to the audiobook from my library. So even if I am still succumbing to this series that I'm kind of meh about, at least I am not buying the books anymore. There's that. Maybe I have made some progress. But yeah, I thought this one was fine. It was fun to like revisit some of these characters and like Nancy's character. I think that after this point, I'm going to stop reading this series. We'll find out next year if I stick to that. But yeah, I thought this one, like, I enjoyed it. It was fine. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Also, I don't know if I said what rating I gave Song of the Huntress. I gave that one 3.5 stars too. And then the last fantasy I have to talk about is The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields, which is like a cozy fantasy romance. And in this, our main character, Marigold, has always felt like she doesn't quite fit in, and then one day her estranged grandmother shows up and tells her that she is a witch, she lives on an island, and that Marigold is also a witch, and that she needs to come to this island to help the grandmother protect it from evil magic and kind of take on her legacy. And Marigold jumps at the chance because she does not want to, you know, get married, kind of be a part of society, and she's like, maybe this is why I never felt like I quite fit in with everyone else. And so she goes with her grandmother, learns from her grandmother, reconnects with some old friends from her childhood, and also maybe finds love. So this one does also have a sapphic romance in it. I feel like this month I had, I think, 3 books that had sapphic romances in them. I haven't talked about one of them yet, but we'll get there. So that was kind of another little like unintentional theme for the month, was sapphic romances. But The Honey Witch. Overall, I thought this was very fun. I think, you know, for what it is, it was like a cute, cozy fantasy. Not necessarily one of my like top tier cozy fantasies, but I had a good time with it. Generally, I liked the characters, I liked the vibes. There are some things about it that I kind of was like, I'm not really sure about this. Like, I think the pacing was maybe a little funny. Like, some parts of it felt like maybe they were moving too quickly, and I was like, this is like a cozy fantasy. We don't need to be rushing through stuff. I had some questions about the romance because there's a little bit like the main character is kind of like drawn to and obsessed with the love interest kind of immediately in a way that doesn't make sense to me. Overall, I had fun. The characters were sweet. You know, the vibes were springy. Overall, pretty good. I gave it 3.5 stars. Like, I had a good time. I would read something else from this author in the future if it sounded interesting. All right, those are all of my fantasies. Now we'll get into the contemporary romance, and I am hoping I will be able to go through this part a little more quickly. But I reread Time to Shine by Rachel Reed, which I read in February and then waited maybe a week and just reread because I loved it so much. So I'm not gonna like get into a lot of details about this one. It is another hockey romance. It is from the same author as Heated Rivalry, but it is a standalone that is not connected to the Game Changer world. And yeah, once again, I read it because I love Landon so much. Once again, 5 stars. I also read This Is How You Get the Girl by Anita Kelly, which is actually the 3rd book in a contemporary romance trilogy, but it is the only one from that trilogy that my library had the audiobook. So I am hoping at some point to read the other 2 books in the series, but this is the one I had access to, and it's one of those series where like you really can read them independently. There were points where I was like, oh, this is clearly referencing something that happened in a previous book, but it wasn't like so terrible that I couldn't like understand or enjoy the book. They're pretty standalone in general. This is my other sapphic romance. It is another contemporary sports romance. The sport in this one is basketball, which I gotta say, I don't love basketball. Not that I am not a sports person anyway, but sport, you know, each sport has a different vibe, and I just don't like the vibes of basketball for some reason. So I was kind of about that aspect of it. But in this, our 2 main characters are Julie and Elle. Julie is a basketball coach for girls' high school basketball. And one day a new girl joins the basketball team, and it turns out that her aunt, who is like I think a former like WNBA player, who kind of like dropped off the map years ago, but Julie was like a huge fan of her at one point, and so she's very excited to meet Elle, who is our other main character. Eventually she convinces Elle to help like coach this girls' basketball team, which brings them together, and they kind of have like it's not really fake dating exactly so much as that Julie hasn't had a relationship before. She hasn't really dated at all. And she also, I think she's either like late 20s, maybe early 30s, and kind of feels like, well, I feel like that opportunity has passed. And so Elle's kind of like, oh, well, what if we just practice together so that you can like get used to what dating is like, which they obviously both like each other, and then they are doing this like fake practice dating, which then of course turns real. And overall I enjoyed this. I find the characters were very likable. I think there are just some things about the relationship dynamic that I didn't love. I think a lot of times that style of like one person kind of like teaching the other about relationships is not my favorite. This was an issue that I also had with, was it Common Goal? One of the Game Changer books has a kind of similar premise to it in that way. And there's just something about that dynamic that always feels a little icky to me, as opposed to, I read another book this year that I forgot the name of, that was also like a practice dating, but it was in a scenario where both parties were kind of like, I need to practice dating for different reasons and different, you know, levels of experience, but like they both kind of were like, you know what, I need help. We're gonna practice together to kind of figure this out for ourselves. And that worked better for me because it felt like a more even playing field. The imbalance in experience is not the issue, because also in Time to Shine there is a big like difference in like level of experience, but it doesn't have the like teaching element. It's really that, which is like the sticking point for me. Overall, I did enjoy this and I did like them together, and I think I gave it 4 stars. Like, all of that to say, it's not like it made me hate this book. It just, there is just a little sticking point for me of being like, I I don't love that, you know? But overall, very fun. And I also read Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto, which is a standalone contemporary romance about two musicians. Our main character is Gwen, and she is a violinist who her parents have passed away. She feels very kind of alone in the world, but she has worked really hard to get a spot on the Pops, which is an orchestra that I think they play pop music, and she feels like she's kind of like found a spot for herself. She worked really hard to get to that point, and she also feels like she's always working really hard to kind of make ends meet. Then our other main character is Xander, who is a cello prodigy, comes from a lot of privilege, also plays on the Pops, but has a kind of separate musical career where he, you know, has a band and travels and all of this. And Gwen has been a big fan of his band for years before ever meeting him. And then one day, she is playing music at a wedding and has to play a cello, which is not her usual instrument. Xander happens to be there and takes notice of her for the first time, even though they've been playing in the Pops together for like a year or more. But he suddenly takes notice of her, and that is kind of what starts them sort of constellating around each other and learning more about each other, as there happens to be some kind of drama as things are shuffled around within the Pops. So this one, I actually enjoyed this more than I was expecting to. I don't know why, but I kind of went into it with low expectations. I feel like it was maybe, for me, missing like just some like emotional element to it that is what really gets me like super invested in a book. But it did certainly have like an emotional element to it that I enjoyed. There was just like something that didn't quite put it over the edge, but overall I liked the way that she wrote characters, and yeah, I liked how the music was really woven into the story. It didn't feel like an afterthought or like a plot device. It was really like part of the characters, and I had a really good time with this one. I think I gave it 4 stars, and I definitely would read more contemporary romance from this author. I think she may also have like a romantasy, and she also has a book that looks like it's like a thriller or something, so I'm not sure about those ones, but I think she might have like 1 or 2 other contemporary romances, and I will for sure be reading those. I know I have one of them on hold at my library, so I'm going to be listening to that hopefully soon. And then finally, we have my reread of most of the Bergman Brothers series by Chloe Leese. So this is a contemporary romance series that follows the Bergman family. It's the Bergman brothers, but there are actually 2 sisters also, and each sibling, there are 7 siblings, each of them gets their own book. We follow their romance. And I love this series so much. I think I read it for the first time in 2024, and this was my first reread of it. I didn't reread every single book because there are 2 of them that I just like, I didn't hate them, but they just like weren't as good, and so this time on reread I was like, I know what happens. I don't really need to reread those ones specifically. So the ones that I read were Only When It's Us, Always Only You, With You Forever, Everything for You, and Only and Forever. I honestly hate the titles of these books. They all sound the same. They're impossible to remember and tell apart. But the thing that I love about this series is, well, there are a few things. One, I love the Bergmans and their family. They have such a just like loving family and family dynamic, and I like that the series has representation for neurodivergence, chronic illness, disabilities. Like each one kind of has different representation in it, but I really appreciate that, especially in romances. And the characters are just so lovable and loving as characters, and they are delightful. Once again, I think my favorites within the series stay the same. My very favorite is Only and Forever, which is the last book in the series. And I especially like the ADHD rep that is in this one. It just feels in some ways the most like true to life to me. And then my second favorite is With You Forever. And then the other three I kind of like equally, which are Only When It's Us, Always Only You, and Everything for You. Those ones are kind of like similar in how much I enjoy them. The difference being those ones are 4 stars, With You Forever is 4.5 stars, and Only in Forever is 5 stars. So that was a delightful reread. And I reread them mostly because I was still in the mood for contemporary romance, but sometimes it's just really hard for me to find contemporary romance that I like, and at the time I just wasn't finding anything, and so I was like, I'm just gonna go back to an old favorite and reread these. So those are all the books that I read in March. I would love to know how your March reading was. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!